I was halfway through my glass of wine when my father cleared his throat, that deliberate sound that always signaled trouble. "Everyone," he said, his voice commanding and warm at once, "I have an important announcement." The mahogany dining table went silent. My mother froze with her fork midair. My older brother Lucas leaned back in his chair with that smug half smile that made me want to punch him. My younger cousin Ana rolled her eyes like she already knew what he was going to say. Only I apparently was still in the dark, though. A cold feeling crept up my spine, warning me this wasn't good. "Next month," my father continued, "we'll be celebrating something very special. My daughter," he fixed his gaze on me, sharp and unyielding, "is getting engaged." The fork slipped from my fingers and clattered against my plate. "Excuse me?" My voice cracked, louder than I intended. "You'll be marrying Daniel Vasquez," he went on, as if I hadn't spoken. "The families have agreed. It's the best decision for everyone." "Everyone but me," Lucas laughed under his breath. "Wow, finally someone's gonna tame her." "Congratulations," Ana chimed in sweetly, but her eyes sparkled with malice. She'd been waiting for me to get knocked down a peg. "I'm not marrying anyone," I snapped, heat rising to my face that my father's stare hardened. "You this isn't a discussion?" I looked at my mother. Her lips trembled, but she didn't speak. That told me everything. She knew. She'd known for a while. The rest of dinner was excruciating. My father talked business with Lucas while I sat there numb, chewing food I couldn't taste. When dessert arrived, he slid a small velvet box across the table toward me. "You'll wear this at the announcement party tomorrow," he said. "Don't embarrass me." My fingers hesitated on the box. "I'm not. You will." His voice carried a weight I'd heard all my life, the weight of commands, not suggestions. The conversation was over. That night in my room, I stared at the box sitting on my nightstand like it was a ticking bomb. I didn't dare open it yet. I didn't want to see whatever symbol of my cage lay inside Dot around midnight. Lucas leaned against my doorway, arms folded, smirking. "You're lucky, you know. Daniel's rich, handsome. Dad could have picked someone worse. Lucky?" I spat. "I'm being auctioned off. Welcome to the family business." He shrugged, walked away, and whistled as if it were a joke. But I wasn't laughing. I barely slept that night. In the darkness, I imagined my life shrinking into a tiny box just like the one on my nightstand, velvet on the outside, suffocating. On the inside, the announcement brunch was held at the Vasquez family estate, all glass walls and marble floors, the kind of wealth that gleamed so hard it blinded you. Waiters floated by with champagne, photographers snapped pictures, and guests whispered about how perfect this union was. Daniel stood beside me in a flawless navy suit, his smile picture perfect for everyone but me. Up close, his charm felt cold and polished like a knife. "Straighten up," he murmured through his grin, gripping my elbow. "People are watching." I forced myself to smile, though my jaw ached. "You could at least pretend to be happy," I whispered back. "I'm pretending," he said smoothly. "Try harder." Throughout brunch, relatives paraded by to congratulate us. My Aunt Cecilia whispered, "You're so lucky, dear. I hope you realize that." Lucky. Everyone kept using that word like it meant anything. When we finally got a moment alone, I asked, "Do you even want this marriage?" Daniel sipped his drink. "One doesn't matter. What's happening? So play your part." His tone was flat, a man who saw me as a business deal, not a bride. Back home that evening, I finally opened the ring box. The diamond caught the light beautifully, but what froze my blood were the tiny gold initials engraved inside the band. Not mine. Not Daniel's. They were my father's initials. That night, fury and dread tangled inside me. I went straight to my father's study, box clutched, tight in my hand. "Why are your initials on my ring?" I demanded. Because it's from me, he said coolly, not even looking up from his papers. This marriage will secure our partnership with Vasquez Holdings. You're sealing it on behalf of the family, not yourself. And not property. I shouted, "Stop being dramatic." He closed a folder with deliberate calm. You'll thank me when you're living in luxury. I don't want luxury, I want my life. Your life is tied to this family. Don't forget that. My mother appeared at the doorway, eyes pleading with me to drop it. Please, just do this quietly, she whispered. I stormed off, shaking. Later that night, I pressed my ear against my father's office door and caught his voice on the phone. Yes, once they're married, the land transfer is automatic. She won't know a thing. My heart hammered. Land transfer? What was he talking about? I barely slept again. And I knew one thing for sure. I had to find out what my father was. Hiding, I didn't wait long to confront my father again. The next evening, after dinner, I walked straight into his study holding the ring box like evidence at a trial. Explain this, I said, throwing it onto his desk. He glanced at it with mild annoyance, as if I just dropped crumbs on his. Paperwork. It's your engagement ring. It has your initials. Yes, because it's from me, not Daniel. He finally looked at me, eyes cold and sharp. This marriage will secure our partnership with the Vasquez family. You're representing us, not yourself. My stomach twisted. Partnership? What partnership? You don't need to know the details. His voice carried that finality. I'd known since childhood, the tone that ended conversations before they began. I'm not property. My voice cracked, louder than I intended. Stop being dramatic. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. You'll thank me when you're living in luxury. I don't want luxury. I want my life. Your life is tied to this family, he said. Don't forget that. The door opened and my mother slipped in, wringing her hands. Please, just do this quietly, she whispered, glancing nervously at him. It's only a wedding. It will keep the family safe. Safe? From what? I asked sharply. Neither of them answered. That night, I decided to listen instead of fight. I pressed my ear against the study door, heart pounding. My father's voice came through low and deliberate. Yes, once they're married, the land transfer is automatic. She won't know a thing. My breath caught. Land transfer? To whom? And why didn't I know anything about it? The next day, Daniel and I had dinner with both families. The men discussed numbers and contracts like I wasn't even there. Daniel leaned over at one point, smiling for show, and whispered, Stop glaring. You're making people nervous. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I muttered, It's just business, he replied. And business is better when the product doesn't complain. Product? I hissed. Relax, he said smoothly. Cutting his steak. Your beautiful packaging. That's all you need to be. When dessert arrived, my cousin Aina made a show of teasing me. So, when's the big bridal shower? I need to know how much to spend on a gift. Unless Dad already paid for you. Laughter erupted at the table. Thin, polite laughter that still sliced through me. Daniel didn't defend me. Neither did my parents. Later that night, I lay in bed, tears burning hot in my eyes. I hated them all. My father for selling me, Daniel for treating me like property, even my mother for staying silent. But hate wasn't enough. I needed proof. I needed to know why the engagement party was a grand affair at our family's country house. Chandeliers glowing, string quartets, playing champagne flowing like rivers. Everyone was dressed like royalty. I felt like I was dressed for execution. Daniel stayed glued to my side, flashing his perfect politician smile for the cameras. Straighten up, he murmured as guests approached. People are watching. Do you enjoy giving orders? I whispered through clenched teeth. I enjoy when people follow them, he replied smoothly. When no one was looking. He tightened his grip on my waist, just hard enough to bruise. I didn't flinch. I refused to give him that satisfaction. During one toast, my father stood up and raised his glass. To family alliances, he declared, and to the future of our two great names. I noticed Daniel's father nodding in satisfaction, and the way his eyes darted to my father's briefcase resting by his chair. What was in there? The night dragged on with polite smiles and fake laughter. My mother kept glancing at me with worry, but said nothing. Aina whispered to a friend loudly enough for me to hear, "She's acting like she's going to her own funeral." After midnight, as the last cars were leaving, my mother pressed a small folded note into my palm without a word. Back in my room, I unfolded it. Her handwriting was shaky. "Meet me in the garden after midnight. I have to tell you something about your father." The garden was silent except for the rustling of roses in the breeze. My mother's silhouette emerged from the shadows, her hands trembling as she held mine. "I didn't know he'd go this far," she whispered. "Your father owes Daniel's father millions." "This marriage, it's payment." I stared at her, numb. "So I'm just collateral?" Tears welled in her eyes. I tried to stop him, but he won't listen to me either. "Why didn't you warn me?" "Because he said he'd cut you off, cut us both off, if we interfered. I thought maybe Daniel wouldn't be so bad." She looked at me helplessly, but now I see. I was wrong. I pulled my hands away. "I'm not going to let this happen. I don't care what he threatens." "Be careful," she begged. "Your father, when he feels cornered, he can be dangerous." As I walked back inside, I heard Lucas laughing in the hallway. "Looking for Dad's study again, huh? Don't bother. He keeps the good stuff locked up." He winked and walked off, completely oblivious to what he'd just given me, but I knew exactly where my father kept his keys. The house was asleep, but my heart thudded loud enough to wake the dead. I padded down the carpeted hallway barefoot, clutching the small ring of keys I'd slipped from my father's jacket earlier. His study door loomed like the entrance to a dungeon. The lock clicked softly. I pushed the door open and slipped inside my father's. Study always smelled of leather and expensive cigars. The desk was immaculate, too immaculate. The real secrets were never left in the open. I crouched by the lower drawers, fingers trembling as I tested keys one by one. Finally, a soft turn. The drawer opened. Inside, I found neat folders. Deeds, contracts, signed agreements, and then I froze. The signatures on several documents were mine, but I'd never signed them. My name, my handwriting, had been forged perfectly. I snapped photos with my phone, scanning everything quickly. Power of attorney papers, bank authorizations, and most chilling of all, a land transfer agreement that automatically triggered upon my marriage to Daniel Vasquez. My father had signed it as guardian and representative of my daughter, even though I was 23. Guardianship at my age? My blood went cold. I nearly jumped out of my skin when I heard the floorboard creak behind me. I spun around, but no one was there, just my imagination. Heart pounding, I slipped out, locked the door behind me, and hurried down the hall. As I rounded the corner, a shadow stepped out. "Daniel, up late, aren't we?" His voice was low, too calm. "I couldn't sleep," I lied. "Maybe you're nervous," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good girls usually are before their wedding." I didn't answer. I walked past him quickly, but his voice followed me. "Careful, darling. You wouldn't want to ruin the big day." The next afternoon, I met my mother in the garden, as her note had asked. Her hands were shaking as she clasped mine. "I didn't know he'd go this far," she whispered, eyes darting toward the house. "Your father owes Daniel's father millions. This marriage, it's payment. I felt like the ground tilted under me. So I'm not a daughter, I'm collateral. I tried to stop him, she said, tears spilling over. But he said, if I interfered, he'd cut you off completely. I thought maybe Daniel wouldn't be so bad. You thought wrong. My voice cracked. You should have told me. She looked so small, so defeated. I was afraid. He doesn't forgive defiance. I pulled my hands away. Well, he's going to learn I don't either. As I stormed back toward the house, I passed Lucas lounging in the hallway, scrolling on his phone. You look like hell, he said casually. Still fighting Dad about this? Do you ever think for yourself, Lucas? I snapped. He laughed. Not when Dad's signing my checks. Then he added with a wink, if you're hunting for paperwork, don't waste time. He hides the good stuff in the bottom drawer. He had no idea what I'd already found that night in my locked bedroom. I went through every photo I'd taken of my father's documents. Fraud, forgery, theft. My father and Daniel weren't just forcing me into marriage. They were using me to launder stolen property. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel, looking. Forward to Sunday. Wear something pretty. And obedient. I stared at it until the letters blurred. Something inside me snapped. I wasn't just scared anymore. I was angry, and anger makes you sharp. The next morning, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in 2 years, Claire Ramirez, my former college roommate. She'd gone on to law school while I'd been trapped in my father's business dinners and family obligations. Long time no see, she said when she picked up. What's wrong? You sound like you're hiding in a closet. Because I am, I whispered. I need your help. And it's about my father. An hour later, I met Claire at a quiet cafe downtown, far from anyone who might recognize me. I slid my phone across the table, showing her the photos. Holy, she cut herself off and leaned closer. Is this fraud, extortion, maybe even money laundering? If you go through with this marriage, you'll be signing away your inheritance and possibly your freedom. I need to stop it. But if I confront him now, he'll destroy the evidence. Then we make copies, Claire said, her lawyer's mind already racing, and you document everything. Conversations, threats, contracts. Don't tip him off. Just smile and nod until the wedding. Why? What's the plan? You'll see, she said, but it ends at the altar. Trust me. I spent the next week pretending to be the obedient daughter and dutiful fiancée. I went to dress fittings, smiled through bridal showers, and let Daniel hold my arm in public while I secretly recorded every conversation on my phone at night. I hid backup copies of the forged contracts inside a silver locket around my neck. A gift from my grandmother, the one person in the family who'd ever believed in me. Daniel was getting bolder. He caught me staring at him during dinner and smirked. Careful, sweetheart. If you're this feisty now, imagine how much fun I'll have breaking you in after the honeymoon. I forced a laugh, even as my stomach turned. You really think I'll just go along with this? I don't think, he said smoothly. No. The night before the wedding rehearsal, my father called me into his study. I trust you're done with your little tantrums, he asked. Yes, father, I said sweetly. Inside, I was screaming. Good, he said. Remember, this is for the family. Your duty is to obey. Do not embarrass me. I nodded, eyes downcast to hide my rage. If he looked closely, he might have seen the flicker of defiance. But he didn't look closely. He never did. The church rehearsal was surreal. The priest smiled warmly, asking if I had anything on my conscience to confess before the big day. Oh, Father, I said softly, glancing at Daniel and my father standing nearby. You have no idea. That evening, Claire called to confirm she had printed copies of everything, deeds, contracts, text messages, and would attend the ceremony as a guest. When the priest asks if you take this man, she said, you'll have a different answer. The morning of the wedding smelled of roses, hairspray, and fear. My bridesmaids flitted around me, adjusting my veil, painting on lipstick I didn't care about. My mother hovered near the doorway, wringing her hands like she wanted to speak but didn't dare. Inside, I was ice, cold, focused, deliberate. I had rehearsed every word of what I would do today, every glance I would fake, every tremble I would suppress. Are you nervous? One of the bridesmaids asked brightly. I smiled. Terrified, I said, and meant it. Just not for the reasons she thought. Claire arrived early, dressed as an elegant guest with a clutch purse that held more than lipstick and tissues. I slipped away from the bridal suite for a moment, my heart pounding, and met her in the side hallway of the church. Everything's ready, she whispered, eyes blazing. The copies are in order. If they try to grab you, I've already alerted 2 journalists to be nearby. They'll have cameras running. Good, I said. Once I start, there's no going back. Do you want me to handle it? She asked gently. You don't have to humiliate yourself in front of everyone. I shook my head. This isn't humiliation, this is justice. The ceremony began with polished precision. Violin music floated through the air as my father escorted me down the aisle. I could feel the weight of every eye in the room, relatives, business partners, even people I didn't know but who clearly mattered to my father. Daniel stood at the altar in a tailored suit, the picture of confidence. When he saw me, he smiled like I was already conquered. I almost laughed. The priest spoke of love, honor, and fidelity, words that felt poisonous in this context. My palms sweated inside my gloves, but my voice remained calm as I responded. To each cue, then came the moment. Do you, Isabella Marquez, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? The church went silent. I looked at Daniel, then at my father, and finally at the crowd of expectant faces. My pulse thundered in my ears. I do not, I said clearly. My voice carried to the back pews. A ripple of shock moved through the church. Daniel's smile froze. My father's face turned purple. Before anyone could interrupt, I stepped forward and addressed the room. This wedding is not an act of love. It's a business deal. A criminal one. Gasps echoed around me. I removed the silver locket from my neck and held it high. And here are copies of forged documents, deeds and contracts my father signed in my name, giving Daniel's family control of Marquez land and assets. This marriage is payment for my father's debts. Chaos erupted. Guests whispered furiously. The priest looked stunned. Daniel reached for me, but Claire appeared like a shadow at my side, snapping open her clutch to reveal more documents. If anyone doubts me, I continued, voice shaking but strong, ask why my father filed for guardianship over me at 23. Ask why Daniel threatened me if I refused to marry him. Ask why my signature appears on papers I've never seen. My father barked, enough, stop this nonsense. No, father, I said, turning to face him. Enough of you. Daniel lunged forward, but Claire held up her phone. One more step and the press gets everything, she said coolly. Cameras were already flashing from the doorway. The journalists she tipped off had arrived. I looked straight at Daniel. You thought I'd walk into this trap, but I'm walking out of it, and I'm taking you both down with me. The room dissolved into shouting. My uncle tried to reach me. My bridesmaids stood frozen, and the priest held up his hands helplessly. Isabella, you're destroying our family. My father roared. No, I shot back. You did that when you sold me off like property. Daniel tried to recover his composure, plastering on a cold smile. This little performance won't work. No one will believe you. They don't have to believe me, I said. They just have to believe the evidence. I gestured to Claire, who was already handing copies of documents to anyone with a camera. Stop her. My father shouted. 2 security men moved forward, but they hesitated, uncertain in front of the flashing lights and murmuring guests. This wedding is over, I said firmly. I turned to the priest. Thank you, Father, but I can't marry a man who threatened me and a family who betrayed. M.E. The priest nodded gravely. You are under no obligation before God to do so. Daniel's mask cracked. He leaned in close, his voice a venomous hiss only I could hear. You'll regret this. I'll make sure you regret it. I stepped back and raised my voice. Did everyone hear that? The groom just threatened me in front of witnesses. Gasps again. My father looked ready to explode. You're finished, Isabella, he shouted. Do you think you can survive without this? Family? I'd rather starve than sell my soul, I said, trembling but refusing to back down. Claire pulled me toward the side exit as the journalists swarmed. Time to go, she murmured. Let them fight each other now. Outside the church, the bright sun felt like freedom. People spilled out behind us, half in shock, half thrilled by the scandal. I could already hear the buzz of phones and cameras. Where do we go? I asked Claire, breathless. Somewhere safe, she said. We're filing everything with the authorities right now. Fraud charges, forged documents, illegal guardianship petitions. Your father and Daniel are in deep trouble. I looked back once and saw my father and Daniel shouting at each other on the church steps. The mighty alliance had already begun to crumble. For the first time in months, I felt something incredible. Not fear, not anger. The morning after the wedding, my face was everywhere. Newspapers, gossip blogs, TV panels. Heiress exposes family scandal at the altar. Some articles called me brave, others called me reckless. I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I was being talked about on my own terms. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, phone buzzing with unanswered calls. My mother had left 30 voicemails, sobbing, begging me to come home so we can talk. My father's voice was on the news denying everything. Daniel's lawyers had already issued a statement calling me confused and unstable. Claire arrived with coffee and a calm smile. You're trending worldwide. Congratulations. Does trending come with security? I asked, rubbing my temples. Because last night I got a message. Watch your back. Let them threaten. She said, we filed everything with the district attorney this morning. The forged contracts, the guardianship petition your father tried to sneak through, even the bank records. They won't walk away from this, but they'll try, I said bitterly. My father has friends in every corner of this city. Later that day, I agreed to meet my mother in a small cafe on the outskirts of town. I wore sunglasses and kept my head low. When she saw me, her eyes were swollen from crying. Isabella, she whispered, gripping my hands. What have you done? What I had to do, I said. You knew what he was planning, didn't you? Tears welled up. I begged him not to. I begged him. But your father? He said it was the only way to save the business. I thought Daniel might treat you well. I pulled my hands away. You thought selling me off would hurt less if the cage was gold. She flinched. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't undo. Forged signatures, it doesn't erase threats. My voice cracked, but I forced myself to stay steady. You stood by and let him do this to me? I was afraid, she admitted, her lips trembling. Afraid of losing everything. Afraid of him. I leaned closer. Then stop being afraid. He can't hurt you anymore. Not if you stand with me. For a moment, she looked as if she might say yes, but then her gaze dropped. I can't. My heart sank. Then you're part of the problem. I stood to leave. And I'm done protecting you. That night, a subpoena was issued for my father to appear in court. The day was moving fast, maybe too fast. Daniel's family issued threats through the press, calling the allegations lies from a spoiled daughter. I couldn't sleep. Every knock on the door made me jump. At 3 a.m., I finally called Claire. They're going to try something desperate, I whispered. I can feel it. That's why I've booked you on the morning show tomorrow. She said, if you stay visible, they can't touch you. No one dares silence a girl live on national TV. The next morning, under bright studio lights, I told the world everything. About the forged documents, about the threats, about how my father saw me not as his daughter, but as leverage. When I finished, the anchor leaned forward. What do you want now, Isabella? I took a deep breath. I want my life back, and I want justice. The cameras kept rolling as I looked straight into the lens. Dad, Daniel, if you're watching this, I'm not afraid of you anymore. You can't buy me. You can't silence me. And I'm coming for every last lie you built. The interview went viral within hours. And by nightfall, arrest warrants were issued for fraud and conspiracy. The courthouse steps were swarming with reporters the day my father and Daniel were arraigned. I stood off to the side with Claire, watching as they arrived in tailored suits. Trying to look untouchable, when my father spotted me, his glare could have cut glass. Ungrateful child, he spat as the officers led him inside. Free woman, I corrected softly. The trial was messy, public, and humiliating for them. Witnesses came forward, former accountants, family employees, even my cousin who admitted he'd been ordered to keep me under watch. The forged contracts spoke for themselves. Daniel tried to smear me, calling me unstable and claiming I'd forged the papers myself. That handwriting experts and bank records crushed that lie. My mother testified reluctantly, confirming that my father had pressured her to convince me to cooperate. Her voice shook as she admitted, I was too afraid to protect my daughter. I didn't cry, not once. I sat through every session with my head high, wearing the locket that had once been my prison but was now my proof. The verdict came on a crisp autumn afternoon. Guilty on all counts. Daniel was sentenced to prison for fraud and coercion. My father faced a longer sentence for financial crimes and abuse of guardianship powers. The family empire they tried to protect collapsed overnight. After the sentencing, my father turned to me as they led him away. His face was gray with rage. You'll regret this. You'll regret destroying your own blood. I met his eyes. Steadily, the only thing I regret is not standing up to you sooner. Life after the trial wasn't simple. I lost friends who'd only liked me for my family name. I lost the mansion, the cars, the endless stream of money, but I gained something better, myself. I moved into a small apartment overlooking the city skyline. I took a job at a local nonprofit helping women trapped in forced marriages. Women. Like I had almost been. The work was hard, but it was honest. Every paycheck felt like freedom. One evening, Claire visited with takeout and a bottle of wine. You know, you could write a book about all this, she said. People would read. I laughed. Maybe, but I think I'm done living for other people's attention. As the sun set behind the skyline, I stood on my tiny balcony and breathed in the cool air. No guards, no watchful relatives, no leash around my neck, for the first time. My name belonged only to me. I used to think family meant obedience, that love meant sacrifice, that my life wasn't really mine to live. But the day I walked away from that altar, I learned the truth. No one, not even the people who raised you, has the right to sell your future. My father lost his empire. Daniel lost his freedom. I lost my old life, and thank God for that. Because in losing it, I found something far more precious. I found me.